We now return to Motor City Burning, a special presentation of WILS News.
By the time Governor Romney authorized the mobilization of the Camp Grayling National Guardsmen at 10:50 p.m. Sunday evening, the city's west side was a virtual war zone. Romney's press secretary, Chuck Harmon, who flew into Detroit from East Lansing via state police helicopter Sunday evening, recalls the aerial view.
It was like flying into the London Blitz. As we flew in and got closer to Detroit in the helicopter, we could see the fires, and it looked like the whole city was on fire.
Well, I'm about to get upset, watching my TV, checking out the news until my eyeballs fail to see. I mean to say that every day is just another rotten mess, and when it's gonna change, my friend, is anybody's guess.
Hubert Locke watched the destruction from atop police headquarters and wept as his hometown engulfed itself in flames.
Jerry Kavanaugh had done so much to try to turn that city around and drag it kicking and screaming into the second half of the 20th century, and particularly had made improving race relations the centerpiece of his administration's efforts. And he felt, and I think with good reason, that he was making some progress in that regard. And of course, this just pulled the legs out from under that stool.
By midnight Sunday, the violence had spread west to Livernois, north to 7 Mile, south to the Detroit River, and eastward across Woodward Avenue to Connor. The now citywide mob had grown to an estimated 11,000 people. Thomas Novak recalled the brazen attitude of the looters as his TMU squad attempted to clear Grand River Avenue Sunday evening.
People were inside the drugstore looting it, inside the liquor store looting it, and just to the left of our front rank, somebody put something in a mailbox. There was 3 people, 3 men, and it looked like he put a gun in the mailbox. But one of our officers ordered him against the wall, and they just said, "F*** you." And he wound up to give him a butt stroke, and I can still hear the sergeant yelling, "Deacon, no, Deacon, no." And he hit him with a butt stroke, and I tell you, them 3 guys were climbing the wall as soon as the one went down. Because as far as I'm concerned, you fight fire with fire. You know, you don't watch it burn. You meet force with a greater force. My own opinion.
In addition to the looting and fires, snipers had arrived with nightfall. Their menace would continue for most of the next 5 days. Thomas Novak put in an 18-hour day on Sunday. Married with a family, he recalls a conversation he had with his wife early Monday morning.
When I awoke the next morning, my wife was holding on to my leg, like I wasn't going to be there tomorrow. And she says, "I'm scared." And I told her, "I'm scared too." She says, "I want you to leave." And basically, our youngest was 6 months old when the riot broke out. She was born in February '67. And we had 4 children, and I told her, "Give me a year, and I'll find another way to make a living." And so, myself, I was scared.
With a 7-hour trip by military convoy from Grayling to Detroit ahead of them, the vast majority of Michigan Guardsmen wouldn't arrive in the city until late Monday morning. Over the next few hours, both Mayor Kavanaugh and Governor Romney would contact Washington, D.C. to request federal troops for Detroit. The tension between the Democratic mayor and the Republican governor, which had always been visible, was now at the breaking point. Chuck Harmon explains.
We supposedly had an understanding as to who was doing the communicating with Washington. And Bob and Dan Hoffman, the governor, and I, for some reason, we were looking for a telephone to use away from our office, and we walked into a side room somewhere, and we realized that Kavanaugh was on the phone, and he was talking to Vice President Humphrey. So what we realized at that point was that he was having his own private conversations, and they were aside from the understanding we had as to how we were going to be dealing with the matter. And from that point, and he obviously was very embarrassed when, like a kid who's been caught with his fingers in a cookie jar. He was physically embarrassed, and we just kind of turned around and went out again. From that point on, we went on with the understanding that we could not trust the mayor, and that was our feeling on him.
On Monday, July 24th, the temperature had soared to 90 degrees on Motown streets, and the riot's tone had changed for the worse everywhere. Over on Kenilworth, the word on the street was that the National Guard had arrived. J.D. Ross.
And then we hear on the radio that they getting ready to bring in the National Guard because it's out of control. And so we thinking, well, National Guard, by the time they get, we're going to wipe this thing out. Then we was hearing that they said they was told to shoot to kill. If you caught looting, you getting hit up, you know. So then we heard on the news some people were getting shot. So I'm sitting up there. We say, well, we ain't seen none, you know. We haven't seen anything. So I got together with my cousin and I. We just drawing up some plans. We say, well, it's an auto store right a couple doors down. Nobody has hit it. Now, the one thing we didn't do, what people were doing was selling what they could out the store, and then they would light it and burn it up. Now, we never burnt it up. I never set fire to nothing, you know. Ripped the hell out of them, though. Took everything I could, but I ain't burned nothing. So I told my brother we was going into this auto store, so it had a big old window. So what me and my cousin did, we knocked that whole window out. Now, you got to think now, we kids. We not thinking.
By nearly all accounts, once the National Guard hit the streets of Detroit alongside the now unleashed Detroit Police Department, the violence escalated at a rapid rate. Detroit Free Press reporter Bill Sarin recalls a conversation he had with a National Guard general early in the week.
I was standing out there with the general, and I don't know his name anymore, and I had been in the service, and so we were chatting and using military terms and stuff, and finally he says to me, he says, Sarin, do you know how to kill? And he used the N-word. And I said, no, sir, I don't. And he said, machine guns and tanks, that's how you do it. So I immediately found a payphone. There were no cell phones in those days, and I called in. And the lady who answered was my future wife. And I wanted to give her that quote because I thought, God, I got to get this quote in. And then I chickened out, and I said something like, I got to get this in. And here's what he said. He said, the National Guard will use all available force to suppress this riot. And I remember Judy saying, that's all you got? But, you know, today, I'd put that in the paper.
State Trooper Craig Grunow told us of one particular guardsman he witnessed on 2 separate occasions in a 24-hour period.
He was 17, and he was scared to death. And if I told you that I wasn't scared, that'd be the biggest lie in the world, because you don't go into a situation like that and not be scared. And that, I think that brings your senses about and makes you that much more alert. You take this same kid, and the next night, and I don't know what they call it in combat, but there were 2 old-time Detroit police officers with a station wagon. In the back of the station wagon was a wounded individual, a black female, and this little, very first night, scared National Guard officer. And he is sitting in the back of the station wagon with this black woman with a fixed bayonet on a .30 caliber, cussing at her and poking the bayonet at her throat. I mean, he just went from total fear to the Audie Murphy syndrome, I guess you'd call it. He was wanting to be in the middle of everything, and he was wanting to hurt somebody bad. And the sad part was, these 2 old-timers thought it was funny. You know, I think that had that been me, I would say, hey, young fella, first of all, take the bayonet off the rifle and calm down a little bit, you know. But he became an animal.
Motor City Burning, a special presentation of WILS News, will continue in a moment.